So, Until Dawn. When I heard that this movie was coming out, I was intrigued. I did not have high hopes for it, but I was intrigued. I love the game Until Dawn. I've watched countless playthroughs of the game, and I was intrigued to see how they were going to adapt this into a movie. Now, from the trailers, one of the big reasons I didn't have terribly high hopes for it was because I could see that they weren't going to follow the storyline really of the game. And that saddened me a little bit because the story of the game is actually really good. So the very, very basic bare bones storyline of the video game, okay, and this is going to be spoilers for both the game and the movie. The bare bones story for the game is that you have a brother who loses his two sisters. They go missing, and on the year anniversary of his sister's disappearance, he comes with a group of friends to the ski lodge that they disappeared at as kind of a remembrance. They get together as friends, they're going to remember his sisters who are missing, have not been found, and then, as you would expect with a horror game, the night kind of spirals out of control, and they encounter supernatural beings of some kind. It's later found out that these are Wendigos, okay? And there is a whole coherent lore backstory as to where these creatures come from, how this ties in with the disappearance of his two sisters, and that's the game. So the movie is directed by David Sandberg. It stars Ella Rubin, Odessa Azion, Maya Mitchell, Peter Stormare, and others. This film adaptation has a similar setup at the beginning. So you have a girl whose sister has gone missing, just one sister this time. And similar to the video game, she gathers with a group of her friends and they've been on this kind of pilgrimage around the area, remembering her sister, okay? Again, she has gone missing, has not been found. It's like a trip in remembrance of her, and they're kind of retracing her sister's steps. I'm not sure if the implication is they're trying to find her or if they're just solely having a remembrance kind of trip for her, but completely different characters. These are not the characters from the video game Until Dawn, with the exception of Peter Stormare. So in the video game, Peter Stormare is almost kind of like your narrative guide. So he's kind of a storytelling device in the game. For a lot of the game, he's kind of this almost separate cutscene where things get clarified and explained. He serves a similar function in the movie. So up to this point, you might be thinking, what's the deal? What's wrong? You know, it sounds very narratively similar. You know, you have siblings go missing, kind of a remembrance trip happening amongst friends, and then things go terribly wrong. And you have Peter Stormare. So what's wrong? Well, where the movie fails the most, in my opinion, is in two major places, okay? So the game is very choice-based and it's high stakes. Every choice you make in the game, supposedly, has consequences as you go on. And there are very real consequences to where you can kill off characters. The goal is to get to the end of the night with everyone alive. But if you make the wrong decisions or the wrong chain of decisions, you end up killing characters, and you end up getting worse and worse endings to the game the more characters you kill off. And there are some endings where you can kill off everybody. There are some endings where you can save everybody. There are some endings where some of them die, some of them don't. But in one singular playthrough of the game, it's high stakes in that if somebody dies, they're dead for that whole playthrough, okay? You have to literally start the game over from scratch in order to have somebody come back. So in the film, it's completely different. In the film, there's an hourglass that keeps resetting every night, okay? So the first night, everybody dies, it resets, they come back and they have another stab at the night, okay? So it's this weird time warp that they get stuck in where they're trying to survive the night. Everybody keeps dying. They keep getting brought back. You know, this is maybe satisfying for those who like a good gory slasher because it gives the movie the opportunity to keep killing characters off in more, you know, fantastical, gross, gory fashions each time. But like I said, this is very different from the video game because essentially what this structure does is it eliminates the stakes to the story because every time somebody dies, you know, oh, they're just going to come back. I think that's a major problem. Now, the reason I think they did this structure is because I think maybe they were trying to emulate this idea that in a video game, you can go back and try again for the optimal ending. So I think maybe this structure was to be like, oh, you know, in the video game, if you fail, you just start the game over and you try again. I think that's what they were trying to emulate, but it just kills the stakes in the movie. It makes everybody's death inconsequential because you know everybody's going to come back anyway. The second big failing of this movie, in my opinion, is that it had a very sparse, weak, kind of vague explanation for everything that was going on. Again, this is spoilers. In kind of the end of the movie, it's revealed that Dr. Hill, played by Peter Stormare, is a psychiatrist who's basically studying people and how they interact with fear and trauma and terror and horror, okay? So basically, everyone who gets stuck in this loop is like his test subject. He's observing them. I just thought this was a very weak kind of explanation for what was going on, because the video game has Wendigos as the supernatural foe. And the backstory to the Wendigos in the video game is that there was an old mine that collapsed, trapped a bunch of miners in this collapse, and they resorted to cannibalism. Okay, when they got rescued, they were being basically cared for at a sanatorium, and slowly these miners who are trapped down there, who resorted to cannibalism, start to be basically possessed by the spirit of a Wendigo and turn into Wendigos themselves. The narrative idea is that cannibalism is what turns one into a Wendigo. So there's a pretty clean narrative device for where we get our supernatural beings, our foes, in the video game. But in the movie, there are all kinds of weird supernatural foes. There's a guy in a clown mask. There's like a possessed doll. There's like a giant creature. And then there's the Wendigos too, which I believe the Wendigos came about in the same manner that they did in the video game, but that's kind of brushed over very lightly in the narrative of the movie. So the explanation that Peter Stormare's character gives in the movie for what all these entities are is he's saying, oh, these are just representations of our main character's fears, basically. For instance, there's a weird thing that if you drink the water when you're caught in these time loops, you end up exploding, okay? And he explains this away as being, oh, this is a representation of your self-destructive tendencies. So he has like a clever little psychological explanation for what all of these entities represent inside of her mind as fears, as terrors, as insecurities. This, I think, as an explanation for what is going on, is just really messy because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's like, what is his motive studying the fears of people? And how is it that they're experiencing all these things? Is this like a simulation? Are they drugged? Is this happening in real life? I don't know. It's not really explained what is going on here. In the video game, they have a very clean narrative explanation as to what's going on, although it is supernatural. You know, it's fantastical, but it makes sense. In the movie, it's, like I said, it's very sparse. It's very kind of confusing, very vague. And some of the same lore is there, but entirely different lore is there that's not really explained. And I think that's the other major failing of the movie. You know, if you're a fan of slashers, I think you'll appreciate this movie, but it's very sparse on story. It's kind of confusing. And at the end of the day, though it does pay tribute to the video game in many ways, at a certain point, it just diverges completely from the video game and becomes something completely different. And one other thing that was a little confusing to me at the end of the movie, I think I understood this correctly, but there's a scene where we see the file of Joshua Washington on Peter Stormare's character's desk. And Joshua Washington is one of the original characters from the video game. Okay, he is the brother that loses his two sisters that basically initiates this whole trip amongst friends. Okay, and at the very end of the movie, we see in Dr. Hill's office, Peter Stormare's character's office, we see all of his security footage, and we see a scene of a car pulling up in front of a building that's kind of covered in snow, and it's a snowy atmosphere. And so I think what that means is that this movie happened before the events of the video game Until Dawn. So I think it's like a prequel in a weird way. I think I understood that correctly. So though this movie has entertainment value for sure, especially if you're a slasher fan, I don't think it does a good job of evoking the feeling that the video game brought you. The video game had a much cleaner narrative, and it worked a lot better than this movie. This movie was really messy when it came down to trying to explain what exactly was going on in this world. So it ended up kind of being what I was expecting. It wasn't that spectacular, but it was entertaining to watch just because I do love the video game so much. It holds a special place in my heart. Watching playthroughs of Until Dawn was like crack to me. I watched so many playthroughs, and it's really what got me into watching playthroughs. I had this opinion of playthroughs. I was like, you know, who would watch somebody else play a video game? That's kind of stupid. And then I watched Until Dawn playthroughs, and I was like, I get it now. So thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. Let me know what you thought of the movie if you saw it down in the comments below. I'll see you next time.